My mother-in-law always said I wasn't worthy of her son. After he died, she tried to kick me out of the house. But when the notary read the will, her face went pale. It turned out my husband had left her only... I'm glad you're here with me. Please listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I met Richard when I was 23. He was kind, patient, and saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself. We built a life together over 35 years. A modest but comfortable life in a 3-bedroom house in Portland, Oregon. We never had children, but we had each other, and that had always been enough. His mother, Eleanor, never thought I was good enough for him. From the very first dinner at her grand Victorian home in the hills, she made it clear. The way she looked at my dress, my shoes, my job as a school librarian, the way she pronounced my maiden name, Morrison, as if it tasted sour. "Oh, you're from that part of town," she had said, smiling thinly. Richard always defended me. "Mom, please," he would say, his hand finding mine under the table. But Eleanor was relentless. For 35 years, she found small ways to remind me I was beneath her son. The wrong gift at Christmas, the subtle exclusion from family photos, the comments about how other women in her social circle had married so much better. When Richard was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, everything changed. It happened so fast. One day he was complaining about back pain. The next we were sitting in an oncologist's office hearing words like stage 4 and 6 months, maybe less. Eleanor swooped in immediately. Suddenly the devoted mother, bringing expensive meals, hiring private nurses, taking over our living room with her presence. I watched her watch me during those final weeks. There was something calculating in her eyes, something cold. She would arrive early in the morning and stay late into the evening, always positioning herself between Richard and me. "Let him rest, Carol," she would say, her hand on my arm, guiding me away from my own husband's bedside. Richard died on a Tuesday in October. The leaves were turning, and he had always loved fall. I held his hand as he took his last breath, and for just a moment, it was only the two of us, like it had always been. Then Eleanor's sob filled the room, loud and theatrical, and nurses rushed in, and the moment was gone. The funeral was a blur. Eleanor organized everything, overruling my wishes at every turn. White roses instead of the yellow ones Richard loved. A minister he'd never met instead of our friend from the book club. I was too numb to fight. I stood beside his casket in a black dress Eleanor had deemed appropriate, and I felt like a ghost in my own life. 3 days after the funeral, Eleanor appeared at my door with her daughter Jennifer, Richard's older sister cut from the same cloth as their mother. They didn't knock. Eleanor still had a key from when she'd been visiting during Richard's illness. I heard the door open and found them standing in my kitchen. Eleanor's sharp eyes scanning the room as if taking inventory. "We need to talk about the house," Eleanor said, setting her expensive handbag on my kitchen counter. I stared at her. "What about the house?" "Well, it's only practical, dear. This house is far too large for one person, and frankly, you can't afford to maintain it on a librarian's pension." She said librarian the way some people say cockroach. "Jennifer and I have been discussing it, and we think it's best if you move into something smaller, an apartment, perhaps. We can help you find something affordable." Jennifer nodded, her arms crossed. "It's what Richard would have wanted. For you to be taken care of, not burdened." I felt something crack inside me. This is my home. Richard and I bought this house together. We've lived here for 28 years. Eleanor's smile was thin and sharp. "Be reasonable, Carol. You'll need to sell it eventually. Why not now, while the market is good? We can help manage the sale. Take care of all the complicated details." She exchanged a glance with Jennifer. "We're family, after all. That word, family. After 35 years of making me feel like an outsider, now she wanted to claim family? I think you should leave, I said quietly. Eleanor's expression hardened. Don't be difficult. We're trying to help you. Please leave my house. They left, but Eleanor's parting words hung in the air like poison. You're going to regret this stubbornness, Carol. Richard left me something in his will, you know. We'll see what the lawyer has to say. The will reading was scheduled for the following Monday. I arrived at the law office of Marcus Chen, Richard's attorney, with my stomach in knots. Eleanor and Jennifer were already there, seated in the plush chairs like queens holding court. Eleanor's lawyer, a severe woman in a gray suit, sat beside them. Mr. Chen was a small, precise man in his 50s. He had known Richard for 20 years, had handled all our legal affairs. He gave me a small, sympathetic smile as I entered and gestured to a chair across from Eleanor. Let's begin, he said, opening a folder on his desk. I watched Eleanor lean forward slightly, that calculating look in her eyes again. She was so certain, so absolutely sure of whatever Richard had left her. Mr. Chen cleared his throat and began to read. I, Richard James Harrison, being of sound mind. The standard language, details about funeral arrangements, charitable donations. Then he reached the part about assets. To my mother, Eleanor Harrison, I leave the sum of $1 and the knowledge that she has finally gotten exactly what she gave to my wife over the years. Nothing of value. The room went silent. Eleanor's face, carefully composed, went white, then red, then white again. Mr. Chen continued, his voice steady. To my beloved wife, Carol, I leave everything else. The house, all financial accounts, my life insurance policy, and my retirement fund. She has been my partner, my love, and my best friend. She deserves to live in comfort and peace, finally free from those who never valued her. Eleanor stood up so fast her chair fell backward. That's impossible. He wouldn't. He couldn't. But he had. My Richard, my quiet, patient Richard, had finally told his mother exactly what he thought of her. And Eleanor's face in that moment told me this war was just beginning. I drove home in a daze. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Eleanor's screaming still echoed in my ears. She had called me a liar, a manipulator, accused me of forcing Richard to change his will while he was under the influence of medication. Her lawyer had tried to calm her, but Eleanor was beyond reason. This isn't over, she had hissed at me as I left Mr. Chen's office. That house should belong to the Harrison family, not some... She had searched for the cruelest word, interloper. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a long moment staring at the house. My house now, truly legally mine. Richard had made sure of that. But Eleanor's rage had shaken something loose inside me. For the first time since Richard's death, I felt something other than numbness. I felt afraid. Inside, everything looked the same. The blue couch Richard and I had picked out together 15 years ago. The bookshelf he'd built for my collection of first editions. The kitchen where we'd cooked Sunday dinners and argued about whether chili needed beans. But it all felt different now. Vulnerable. Under threat. I made tea with shaking hands and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Eleanor had stood 3 days ago telling me to leave. I pulled out my phone and looked at my bank account. Richard had been practical. The life insurance was substantial, the retirement fund healthy. He'd planned for my future even as he was dying. The thought made tears spring to my eyes. But money didn't solve everything. Eleanor had connections. She came from old Portland money, belonged to exclusive clubs, knew lawyers and judges and city officials. What did I have? A modest career as a librarian, a few close friends, and a house that someone powerful wanted to take from me. I thought about those final weeks with Richard, the way Eleanor had hovered, always present, the private conversations I'd heard her having in the hallway, her voice low and urgent on her phone. At the time, I'd been too focused on Richard's pain, on making him comfortable to pay attention, but now I wondered, what had she been planning? The doorbell rang, making me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw my neighbor, Ruth Martinez. She was 72, had lived next door for 40 years, and had become a good friend over the decades. I opened the door. Ruth stood there with a casserole dish covered in foil. "I made you lasagna," she said simply, "and I wanted to check on you. I saw Eleanor's car here this morning." Her expression was knowing. Ruth had witnessed 35 years of Eleanor's treatment of me. I let her in. We sat in the living room, and suddenly everything poured out. The will reading, Eleanor's threats, my fear that somehow, despite what Richard had done, she would find a way to take this house from me. Ruth listened, her weathered hands folded in her lap. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Carol," she finally said, "Eleanor Harrison is a bully. She's been a bully her entire life. But bullies only win when people are too afraid to fight back." She leaned forward. "Richard gave you a gift. He gave you security, and he gave you a weapon. That will reading? That was him finally standing up to his mother. Are you going to waste that?" Her words hit me like cold water. I don't know how to fight someone like her. You fight with the truth. You fight with the law. You document everything. Ruth pulled out her phone. "I'm a nosy old woman. I notice things. Do you know Eleanor came by your house twice while you were at the hospital with Richard? She had keys. She was inside for over an hour each time." My blood went cold. "What? When?" "October 3rd and October 8th. I remember because I was getting my mail, and I thought it was strange. You were at the hospital around the clock those last 2 weeks." Ruth showed me her phone. She had taken photos. Eleanor's distinctive silver Mercedes in my driveway. Timestamps clearly visible. Why would she... I trailed off, but my mind was already racing. What had Eleanor been looking for? What had she been doing in my house while I held her dying son's hand? Ruth stood up. "Whatever she was doing, it wasn't good. You need to protect yourself, Carol. Get a lawyer, change your locks, and for God's sake, install security cameras." After Ruth left, I sat alone in the growing darkness. I thought about Richard, about the life we'd built together, about how he'd protected me even after death. And I thought about Eleanor's face at the will reading, the shock giving way to fury. She had come into my home without permission. She had been planning something even before Richard died. And now she was threatening me, trying to intimidate me into giving up what was rightfully mine. No. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Chen's office. It went to voicemail. "Mr. Chen, this is Carol Harrison. I need to meet with you as soon as possible. There's something I need to discuss. Something about Eleanor." I paused. I think she might try to contest the will, and I want to be prepared. Then I called a locksmith. They could come tomorrow morning. After that, I searched online for security cameras, the kind that recorded to the cloud, that couldn't be easily disabled. I ordered a system that could be delivered within 2 days. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to let Eleanor destroy what Richard and I had built together. For the first time since Richard's death, I felt something resembling strength. The war Eleanor had started, I was going to finish it. Mr. Chen's office at 9 a.m. on Wednesday was a different place than it had been during the will reading. Quieter, more serious. He sat across from me, his hands folded on his desk, and listened as I told him everything. Eleanor's visit demanding I sell the house. Ruth's photos of Eleanor entering my home while Richard was dying. My growing certainty that something wasn't right. "I want to make sure the will is ironclad," I said. "I need to know she can't break it." Mr. Chen nodded slowly. "Oregon law is clear on this. Richard was of sound mind when he drafted this will. I have medical records confirming that. He was explicit in his wishes, and the language he used indicates this wasn't a rash decision. He'd been thinking about it for some time. He pulled out a file. In fact, Richard came to see me 3 years ago and updated his will then, long before his diagnosis. 3 years ago. When Eleanor had made that scene at our anniversary dinner, criticizing everything from the restaurant I'd chosen to the dress I was wearing, reducing me to tears in front of a room full of people, Richard had been so quiet on the drive home, I thought he was angry with me. But apparently, he'd been angry with her. Can she contest it? I asked. She can try. People can always try, but she won't win. Not with the evidence we have. He paused. However, you should know that doesn't mean she won't cause problems. Contesting a will can tie up assets for months, even years. It's expensive and stressful. Many people give in just to make it stop. I won't give in, I said. He smiled slightly. I didn't think you would. Now, you mentioned that she entered your home while Richard was hospitalized? I showed him Ruth's photos. He studied them carefully, then made copies. This is very interesting, he said. Do you know if anything was taken? Any documents that might be missing? I hadn't thought about that. I don't know. I haven't looked. Everything's been such a blur. I suggest you conduct a thorough inventory of Richard's papers, his personal files, any documents related to the house, financial statements, anything legal. And Carol? He looked at me seriously. If you find anything missing or anything that looks tampered with, call me immediately. I spent the rest of Wednesday and all day Thursday going through Richard's home office. He'd been meticulous, thank God. Everything filed and labeled. Financial statements in one drawer, medical records in another, house documents in a third. The house documents were what caught my attention. Our original deed was there, dated 1997. Richard Harrison and Carol Morrison Harrison, joint tenancy with right of survivorship. But beneath it was another document, one I didn't recognize. It was a quitclaim deed, dated just 2 weeks before Richard's death, transferring my interest in the house to Eleanor Harrison. My signature was on it, notarized. But I had never signed it. I stared at the document, my heart pounding. The signature looked like mine. Similar loops, similar slant, but it wasn't quite right. The C was wrong. I always made my C's with a distinctive flourish, a habit from my years as a librarian signing out books. This C was close, but not exact. This was what Eleanor had been doing in my house. She'd been planting evidence, creating a paper trail to steal my home. I took photos of the document with my phone, then I called Mr. Chen. He answered on the second ring. I found something, I said, my voice shaking. A forged quitclaim deed. Eleanor's trying to claim I signed over my interest in the house. Silence, then. Don't touch it. Don't move it. I'm sending someone to your house right now to collect it as evidence. Carol, this is fraud. Criminal fraud. Within an hour, a paralegal from Mr. Chen's office arrived and carefully collected the forged document, sealing it in a protective envelope. She also took the other house documents, photographing everything. We'll have the signature analyzed, she said. But this is good. This is very good. It means we can go on the offensive. That evening, Eleanor called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Carol. Her voice was ice. We need to talk. I don't think we have anything to discuss. Oh, I think we do. You see, I've been going through Richard's papers, and I've discovered some interesting documents. Documents about the house. Documents with your signature. A pause, loaded with meaning. I think you should reconsider your position. Sign over half the house to me, and we can forget this unpleasantness. So that was her play, use the forged document to extort me. She didn't know I'd found it. I'm not signing anything, I said. Then I'll have no choice but to take legal action. I have evidence that you attempted to defraud the family. That deed transfer you signed? It seems there were irregularities. I'd hate to see you face criminal charges." The audacity took my breath away. She'd forged my signature, and now she was threatening me with fraud. "Eleanor," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded, "I think you should talk to your lawyer before you do anything else." "I found the quitclaim deed," I interrupted, "the one you planted in Richard's office, the one with the forged signature, and it's now in the hands of my attorney." The silence on the other end was profound. "You're bluffing," she finally said, but her voice had changed. Uncertain now. "Am I? Your attorney can contact Marcus Chen if you'd like to verify. I'd do it soon, though. We're filing a police report in the morning." I paused. "Fraud is a serious crime, Eleanor. Forgery, identity theft. I imagine the district attorney will be very interested." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt a fierce satisfaction. Ruth was right. Eleanor was a bully, and I just pushed back. 5 minutes later, Jennifer called. I didn't answer. Then Eleanor called again. I blocked both numbers. At midnight, a car pulled up outside my house. Through the new security camera I'd installed that afternoon, I watched Eleanor and Jennifer sit in Eleanor's Mercedes, staring at my house. They stayed there for 20 minutes before driving away. I didn't sleep that night, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry, and I was ready to fight. Friday morning, I met with Mr. Chen and a criminal defense attorney he'd brought in, David Kowalski. We sat in a conference room with the forged quitclaim deed displayed on the table between us like evidence at a trial. "This is prosecutable," David said flatly. He was in his 40s with iron gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Forgery, attempted fraud, identity theft. If we file a police report, they'll investigate. The notary stamp can be traced. The signature analysis will prove forgery. And if Mrs. Harrison actually tried to file this deed," he shook his head, "she'd be looking at felony charges." "What do you recommend?" I asked. "That depends on what you want. Justice, revenge, or just to be left alone?" I thought about Richard, about 35 years of Eleanor's cruelty, about how she'd invaded my home while her son lay dying. "I want her to stop," I said. "I want her to leave me alone forever." David nodded. "Then we use this as leverage. We file the police report. That's non-negotiable. We have to create an official record. But we also draft a cease and desist letter that makes it clear if she backs off completely, drops any claims to the estate, and never contacts you again, you won't push for prosecution." He looked at me seriously. "But the moment she violates that agreement, we throw the book at her." "Do it," I said. The police report was filed that afternoon. Detective Sarah Walsh from the Fraud Division took my statement, examined the forged deed, and reviewed Ruth's photos showing Eleanor accessing my house. She was thorough and professional, and when she left, she told me they'd be opening an official investigation. "We'll need to interview Mrs. Harrison," she said, "and her daughter if she was involved. This might get uncomfortable." "I understand." By Saturday morning, Eleanor knew. Her attorney called Mr. Chen's office demanding to know what was happening. The cease and desist letter was delivered that afternoon via courier. I didn't get to see Eleanor's reaction, but her attorney's response arrived within 2 hours. A blistering letter threatening countersuits for harassment, emotional distress, and defamation. "Posturing," David said when he called to tell me. "They're scared. The forgery is real. The evidence is solid. They're trying to intimidate you into backing down. Sunday evening, they showed up at my door. I was making dinner when the doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw Eleanor and Jennifer standing on my porch. Eleanor looked composed, dressed in an expensive camel coat. Jennifer looked angry. I didn't open the door. Instead, I used the camera's intercom feature. "You need to leave," I said. The cease and desist letter was clear, no contact. Eleanor looked directly at the camera. "Carol, please. We need to talk. This has gotten out of hand. I'm sure we can work something out. Families shouldn't treat each other this way." "You forged my signature," I said. "You tried to steal my house." "That's not... There's been a misunderstanding. Come, let's discuss this like reasonable adults. Through our attorneys. That's how we'll communicate from now on." Jennifer stepped forward. "You ungrateful bitch. My brother gave you everything, and this is how you repay his family? By making false accusations against his mother?" "The accusations aren't false," I said, "and I have evidence. Now leave, or I'm calling the police." Eleanor put a hand on Jennifer's arm, silencing her. "Carol, think carefully. You're alone now. No Richard to protect you. Do you really want to make enemies of the Harrison family? We have resources, connections. We can make your life very difficult." There it was, the naked threat. "I'm recording this," I said. "Every word. The police will be very interested to hear you threatening me." Eleanor's mask slipped for just a second. I saw fury in her eyes, pure and cold. Then she smiled, that thin, dangerous smile. "We're family, Carol. I'm just concerned about you. But if you want to do this the hard way..." She turned and walked back to her car, Jennifer following. I watched them drive away, then immediately emailed the security footage to Detective Walsh and David Kowalski. But I was shaking. Eleanor's threat had been real. She did have connections. What if she found a way to hurt me? What if having the law on my side wasn't enough? I called Ruth. She came over immediately, took one look at me, and made me sit down while she made tea. "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "They're desperate. People only make threats like that when they know they're losing." "I'm scared," I admitted. "Good. Fear means you're taking this seriously, but Carol?" She gripped my hand. "You're not alone. I'm here. Your friends from the library are here, and you have the law on your side." Over the next few days, I forced myself to rest. I couldn't spend every moment in fight or flight mode. I'd make myself sick. I read books, took long walks, tried to process everything that had happened since Richard's death. On Wednesday, exactly 2 weeks after the funeral, I met with some of my colleagues from the library. Sarah, Thomas, and Diane, people I'd worked with for over 20 years. I told them everything. "What can we do?" Sarah asked immediately. "Just be there," I said. "I feel like I'm going crazy, like maybe I'm overreacting." "You're not overreacting," Thomas said. He was retired FBI, had taken the library job for something to do. "Everything you've described is classic intimidation. They're testing your boundaries, seeing if they can make you fold. Don't." Their support meant everything. For the first time since Richard's death, I didn't feel completely alone. But I knew this was just the calm before the storm. Eleanor hadn't backed down. She'd retreated, but she was planning something. I could feel it. On Thursday evening, Detective Walsh called. "Mrs. Harrison, we've completed our preliminary investigation. The signature on that deed is definitely forged. The notary stamp is also fraudulent. It belongs to a notary who retired 2 years ago. We're bringing Mrs. Eleanor Harrison in for questioning tomorrow." I hung up and stared out the window at the darkening sky. Tomorrow, Eleanor would be questioned by police. Tomorrow, this would become official, irrevocable. I had crossed the point of no return. There was no going back now. Friday morning, Eleanor's attorney called Mr. Chen. They wanted to negotiate. "A settlement?" I asked when Mr. Chen called to tell me. I was in my kitchen, the same kitchen where this had all started when Eleanor demanded I leave my house. "Yes. They're offering to drop all claims to the estate in exchange for you dropping the criminal complaint." Mr. Chen's voice was carefully neutral. "It's not a bad offer, Carol. It ends everything. You keep the house, the money, everything Richard left you, and Eleanor goes away. What about consequences for what she did? There wouldn't be any. That's the trade-off. Clean slate. I thought about the forged deed, the violation of entering my home, 35 years of cruelty and condescension. No, I said. She doesn't get to commit crimes and walk away. I thought you might say that, just wanted to make sure. He paused. They're going to try to contact you directly. Be prepared. He was right. That afternoon, Jennifer showed up at my door, alone this time. She looked different, softer somehow, less angry. Through the security camera, I could see she was holding something. "Carol, please," she said to the camera. "I know you don't want to see me, but I brought something of Richard's, something I think you should have." Against my better judgment, I opened the door, but I stood in the doorway, not inviting her in. Jennifer held out a photo album from when Richard was young. Mom was going to throw it out, but I thought you might want it. I took the album, opened it. Pictures of Richard as a child, as a teenager. Some I'd seen, many I hadn't. My heart ached. "Thank you," I said carefully. Jennifer smiled. It looked genuine. "Carol, I know things have been difficult between you and Mom, between all of us. But at the end of the day, we both loved Richard. That should count for something, shouldn't it?" Here it was, the approach I'd been expecting. "What do you want, Jennifer?" "I want this to be over. I want us to be able to remember Richard without all this anger and fighting." She stepped closer. "Mom made a mistake, a bad one, but she's still my mother, Richard's mother. She's 74 years old. Do you really want to see her go to prison?" "She forged my signature to steal my house," I said flatly. She was grieving. She wasn't thinking clearly. Jennifer's voice took on a pleading tone. "Carol, please, take the house. Take all the money. We'll never bother you again. Just don't press charges. Don't destroy what's left of our family." I looked at her, really looked at her. She seemed sincere. But I remembered her standing in my kitchen with Eleanor, telling me I needed to move out, telling me it's what Richard would have wanted. "Jennifer, I appreciate the photo album, but the answer is no. Your mother committed a crime, multiple crimes, and I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen just because it's uncomfortable." Her expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. Mom has friends, important friends. This could get very ugly for you." And there it was, the threat beneath the sympathy. "Then it gets ugly," I said, and closed the door. I watched through the camera as Jennifer stood on my porch for a long moment, then walked back to her car. She sat in it for several minutes before driving away, probably calling Eleanor, telling her the emotional appeal hadn't worked. That evening, the temptation came from another direction. An email arrived from someone named Patricia Wilcox, identifying herself as a family friend of the Harrisons. She'd heard about our disagreement and wanted to mediate. She was a retired judge, respected in the community, and she was sure we could find a resolution that would satisfy everyone. I forwarded the email to David Kowalski. He called within the hour. "Don't respond. Patricia Wilcox is on the board of 3 charities with Eleanor. This is another attempt to get around the legal process." "I wasn't planning to respond," I said. "I'm done being manipulated." "Good." I could hear the approval in his voice. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, I'm tired, but I'm okay." The truth was, I'd found a strange kind of peace. The fear from earlier in the week had settled into something colder, calmer. I knew what I was doing. I knew why I was doing it. And I wasn't going to be swayed by photo albums or veiled threats or offers of mediation from biased judges. On Saturday, something unexpected happened. I received a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Richard's cousin, Michael. He lived in Seattle, had always been the black sheep of the Harrison family. Richard had mentioned that Michael and Eleanor had a falling out years ago over something Michael never explained. "Carol, I heard what's happening," he said, "and I wanted you to know. What Mom did to me, she's doing to you." "What do you mean?" "When my dad died, he left me his business, a small manufacturing company. Mom tried to contest the will, said Dad wasn't in his right mind. When that didn't work, she forged documents saying I'd promised to sell the company to her at below-market rates." He paused. "It took 3 years and most of my inheritance to fight her in court, but I won. And Carol, you'll win too. Just don't give up." I felt tears spring to my eyes. I didn't know. She's good at hiding her tracks, and the family closes ranks. But what she's doing isn't new. She's been manipulating and stealing from people for decades. He gave me his lawyer's contact information. "If you need anything, testimony, evidence of pattern behavior, call me." After we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: vindication. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. Eleanor was exactly who I thought she was. Sunday, I went to church for the first time since the funeral, the small Episcopal church Richard and I had attended for years. People offered condolences, asked how I was doing. I was vague, but Father Matthew pulled me aside after the service. "Carol, Ruth told me a little about what you're going through. I want you to know, this community is here for you, whatever you need." "Thank you, Father." "And Carol?" He looked at me seriously. "Standing up to evil isn't unchristian. Sometimes it's the most Christian thing we can do." Those words stayed with me. I went home feeling stronger, more certain. Eleanor and Jennifer were watching, waiting for me to crack. But I wasn't going to crack. I was going to finish this. Monday afternoon, a courier arrived with a formal invitation, embossed cardstock, expensive paper. Eleanor Harrison requested the pleasure of my company for lunch at the Portland Club on Thursday at noon, to discuss our family matters in a civilized manner. I showed it to Ruth over coffee that evening. "It's a trap," she said immediately. "The Portland Club is her territory. All her society friends will be there. She wants to intimidate you on her home ground." "I know," I said. "But if I don't go, she'll say I'm being unreasonable, that I'm refusing to negotiate." "Then bring backup. Don't go alone." Thursday, I arrived at the Portland Club at exactly noon. The building was old money: dark wood, leather chairs, oil paintings of long dead members. The maitre d' looked at my department store dress with barely concealed disdain before leading me to a private dining room. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, Jennifer beside her. Both were dressed impeccably. Eleanor wore pearls and a gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. A third woman sat across from them, Patricia Wilcox, the retired judge who'd emailed me. "Carol," Eleanor said, standing. Her smile was warm. Nothing in her expression suggested we'd spent the last 3 weeks in warfare. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." I sat. A waiter appeared immediately with water and menus. "I've ordered the salmon for everyone," Eleanor said. "I hope that's acceptable." "I'm not here for lunch," I said quietly. "You wanted to talk. Let's talk." Eleanor's smile faltered slightly. "Very well, Patricia. This is my daughter-in-law, Carol. Carol, Judge Wilcox has graciously agreed to help us find a resolution to our situation. I'm not interested in meditation," I said, "especially not from someone who sits on charity boards with Mrs. Harrison." Patricia's eyebrows rose. "I assure you I'm completely impartial. Then you should know that Mrs. Harrison is under investigation for forgery and fraud, that she tried to steal my house using forged documents, and that any agreement made under these circumstances would be made under duress." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Eleanor set down her water glass carefully. Carol, I had hoped we could be adults about this, that we could find a way forward that honors Richard's memory. Richard's memory is honored by following his wishes, which were explicit. He left you $1 and the knowledge that you finally got what you deserved. Jennifer flinched. Eleanor's jaw tightened. Richard was ill, Eleanor said, heavily medicated. He wasn't thinking clearly. He changed his will 3 years before he got sick, I said. Mr. Chen confirmed that. This wasn't about medication. This was about 35 years of watching you treat me like garbage. Patricia intervened. Ladies, please, let's keep this civil. Mrs. Harrison. She gestured to both of us. You're both grieving. You've both lost someone you loved. Surely there's a compromise that would allow you both to move forward. There is, I said. Eleanor drops all claims, never contacts me again, and accepts responsibility for her crimes. Eleanor laughed. It was a harsh, cold sound. You actually think you're going to win, don't you? You foolish, stupid woman. Do you know who I am? What I can do? There it was, the mask dropping. I know exactly who you are, I said. You're a bully and a thief, and you're terrified because for the first time in your life, someone is standing up to you. Eleanor stood up abruptly. This was a mistake, Patricia. Thank you for trying. Jennifer, we're leaving. Not yet, Jennifer said. She was staring at me with something like hatred. Carol, let me make this perfectly clear. If you continue with this crusade, we will destroy you. We have attorneys who can tie your assets up for years. We have friends in the media who will make you look like a gold digger who manipulated a dying man. We have connections in city government who can make your life hell. Permits, taxes, inspections. We will make you wish you'd taken our generous offer. I stood up slowly. Is that a threat, Jennifer? It's a promise, she hissed. Patricia looked uncomfortable. I don't think... Shut up, Patricia, Eleanor snapped. Then to me, you have until Monday to accept our settlement. After that, you'll wish you had. Your settlement where I drop all charges and you get away with fraud? I asked. Not happening. Eleanor moved around the table, getting close to me, close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume. You have no idea what you're dealing with, no idea who you're fighting. Richard protected you from me for 35 years, but he's gone now, and I'm going to take everything from you, your house, your money, your reputation. I'm going to leave you with nothing. I looked into her eyes and saw the truth there. She meant every word. She would do everything in her power to destroy me. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry. Try, I said quietly. Do your worst. Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to be charged with forgery and fraud. Your name is going to be in the police reports. Your society friends are going to find out you're a criminal. And everyone will know that Richard despised you so much he left you $1 just to make a point. Eleanor's hand came up. For a second, I thought she was going to hit me, but she caught herself, trembling with rage. Get out, she whispered. Gladly. I walked out of the private dining room through the main restaurant where Eleanor's society friends sat having their expensive lunches, out into the bright November sunshine. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I got into my car and sat there for several minutes processing what had just happened. They'd shown their true faces, the threats, the promises of destruction, the naked aggression. And I'd stood my ground. I drove home, poured myself a glass of Richard's good whiskey, and called David Kowalski. They just threatened me, I said, all of it. Destroying my reputation, tying up my assets, using their connections against me, and I have witnesses. Judge Patricia Wilcox was there. Patricia Wilcox witnessed them threatening you? He sounded delighted. Carol, that's perfect. She'll have to recuse herself from any involvement now, and her presence proves they were attempting to manipulate the legal process. That night, I lay in bed in the house Richard and I had shared for 28 years. I was scared. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. Eleanor and Jennifer had resources I didn't have. They had connections and money and the kind of power that came from generations of wealth. But I had something they didn't have. I was right. The law was on my side, and I wasn't going to back down. The fear I felt? It wasn't weakness, it was fuel. Let them come. I was ready. The call came on Friday morning at 7 a.m. Detective Walsh, her voice tight with urgency. Mrs. Harrison, we need you to come down to the station. Eleanor Harrison tried to file that forged quitclaim deed with the county recorder's office last night. We caught it because we'd put a flag on any documents related to your property. She's here now, and we need your statement. My hands shook as I dressed. This was it. Eleanor had pushed forward with the forgery, even knowing she was under investigation. She'd actually tried to file it, tried to make it official. She'd committed a crime right in front of law enforcement. At the police station, I was shown into a conference room. Detective Walsh sat across from me, along with a deputy district attorney, a sharp-looking woman named Rachel Kim. Mrs. Harrison tried to file the deed at 4:30 yesterday afternoon, just before the recorder's office closed. Detective Walsh explained. She used a lawyer we've identified as Curtis Marsh. He's claiming he had no knowledge the deed was fraudulent. Is that possible? I asked. Possible, Rachel Kim said. But unlikely. Marsh has represented Eleanor Harrison for 15 years. He does all her legal work. Either he's incompetent or he was complicit. What happens now? We're charging her. Forgery in the first degree, fraud, identity theft. She'll be arraigned Monday morning. Rachel looked at me seriously. But I need to prepare you. She's going to come after you. Her attorney is already claiming you're vindictive, that this is harassment, that you're persecuting a grieving mother. It's going to get ugly. It's already ugly, I said. After giving my statement, I left the station. Outside, I found Jennifer waiting by my car. You're destroying her, Jennifer said without preamble. She's 74 years old. She's grieving her son. And you're putting her through this nightmare because you're vindictive and cruel. She forged my signature, I said calmly. Yesterday, she tried to file that forged deed. She's still trying to steal my house, even while under investigation. That's not grief. That's criminal behavior. She made a mistake. No, I said. A mistake is accidental. This was deliberate, calculated, and ongoing. She's had multiple chances to stop. She hasn't. Jennifer stepped closer, her face twisted with rage. You know what Richard told me? 2 days before he died? He told me he was afraid that without him, you'd be alone and vulnerable. He made me promise to watch out for you. She laughed bitterly. He thought you needed protection. But you're not vulnerable, are you, Carol? You're cold. You're calculating. You seduced my brother, isolated him from his family, and now you're cashing in. The words should have hurt. A month ago, they would have destroyed me, but now I just felt tired. Is that what you tell yourselves? I asked. That I manipulated Richard? That's easier than accepting the truth, isn't it? What truth? That Richard loved me more than he loved any of you. That he chose me. Every single day for 35 years, he chose me. And it ate your mother alive. Jennifer's hand shot out, grabbing my arm hard enough to hurt. You have no idea what you've done. Mom is connected. The DA is a personal friend. The judge who will handle her arraignment, they've known each other for 40 years. You think you're going to win? You're going to lose everything. I pulled my arm free. Then I'll lose. But at least I'll lose knowing I stood up for myself. That I didn't let your mother steamroll me the way she's steamrolled everyone else her entire life. "We'll bury you," Jennifer hissed. "We'll bury you so deep you'll never see daylight again." "Maybe," I said, "but you'll have to do it legally, and that's something your family doesn't seem to understand." I got in my car and drove away, watching Jennifer in the rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot with her hands clenched into fists. Monday morning, Eleanor's arraignment. I didn't have to be there, but David Kowalski suggested I attend. Show the court you're not afraid. Show Eleanor you're not backing down. The courtroom was old, wood-paneled, intimidating. Eleanor sat at the defense table with Curtis Marsh and another attorney I didn't recognize. She was dressed in a dove-gray suit, pearls at her throat. She looked small, fragile, a grieving mother being persecuted. When I entered, she turned and locked eyes with me. The hatred there was pure and absolute. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Hendricks, called the court to order. The charges were read: forgery in the first degree, fraud, identity theft. Each word fell like a hammer. Curtis Marsh stood. "Your Honor, my client is a 74-year-old widow who recently lost her only son. She's confused, grieving, and frankly not in her right mind. This entire situation is a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by a vindictive daughter-in-law." Rachel Kim rose. "Your Honor, Mrs. Eleanor Harrison attempted to file a fraudulent deed with the county recorder while under active investigation for the forgery of that very same deed. This isn't grief. This is calculated criminal behavior. We have forensic evidence proving forgery. We have witness testimony. We have photographic evidence of Mrs. Harrison illegally accessing the victim's home. And we have a pattern of behavior." She pulled out a folder. "Documented attempts to defraud family members in the past, including her nephew, Michael Harrison." I saw Eleanor's face go white. She hadn't expected that. "The state requests bail be set at $50,000 and that Mrs. Harrison be prohibited from contacting the victim in any way." Judge Hendricks reviewed the documents in silence. Then she looked at Eleanor over her reading glasses. "Mrs. Harrison, you attempted to file this deed yesterday afternoon, 4 days after being informed you were under investigation for its forgery. Your Honor, I was advised—" Eleanor began, but the judge cut her off. "By your attorney, who is either incompetent or complicit. Either way, it shows continuing criminal intent." She banged her gavel. "Bail is set at $100,000. The defendant is prohibited from any contact with Carol Harrison, directly or through intermediaries. Trial is set for January 15th. She looked directly at Eleanor. "Ma'am, I suggest you consider a plea agreement, because if this goes to trial with the evidence I've seen, you're going to lose." Eleanor's composure cracked. "This is ridiculous. I'm being railroaded by a gold digger and—" "That's enough," Judge Hendricks said sharply. "Another outburst and I'll hold you in contempt." Curtis Marsh put a hand on Eleanor's arm, silencing her. But the damage was done. The court had seen her true face, the entitled rage, the belief that rules didn't apply to her. Outside the courtroom, David pulled me aside. "That went better than I expected. Hendricks is no nonsense. She's not going to be swayed by money or connections." Eleanor looked ready to explode, I said. "Good. People make mistakes when they're angry." He smiled. "This is far from over, but Carol, we just won the first real battle." That night, I sat in my living room in my house, and let myself feel it. The victory. The vindication. Eleanor Harrison, who'd spent 35 years making me feel small, had been publicly humiliated, charged with crimes, stripped of her facade of respectability, and we were just getting started. The trial lasted 3 days. Curtis Marsh tried everything. He brought in character witnesses who testified to Eleanor's charity work, her standing in the community, her decades of service on various boards. He painted her as a confused, grieving mother who'd made an error in judgment. But Rachel Kim was relentless. She brought in the forensic document examiner who testified that the signature on the quitclaim deed was definitively forged. She showed the court Ruth's photographs of Eleanor entering my house without permission while Richard was dying. She brought in Michael Harrison, Richard's cousin, who testified about Eleanor's past attempts to defraud him. And then she did something I hadn't expected. She subpoenaed Richard's medical records and called Dr. Sandra Mills, Richard's oncologist, to the stand. Dr. Mills, in your professional opinion, was Richard Harrison of sound mind when he updated his will? Completely sound. We discussed his end-of-life planning extensively. He was lucid, rational, and very clear about his wishes. Did he ever express regret about leaving his estate to his wife? Never. In fact, in one of our last conversations, he told me he only wished he'd stood up to his mother sooner. He said, and I quote, "Carol deserves everything. She's earned it by putting up with my family for 35 years." I watched Eleanor's face turn to stone. Rachel continued, "Did Mrs. Eleanor Harrison ever visit during these discussions?" "Yes. Multiple times she tried to speak to Mr. Harrison privately about financial matters. He refused. He told her explicitly that he'd made his decisions and they were final." Curtis Marsh tried to recover on cross-examination, suggesting Richard had been coerced, but Dr. Mills shut it down immediately. No one coerced Richard Harrison. He was one of the most stubborn patients I've ever had. When he made a decision, that was it. The nail in the coffin came on day 3. Rachel called the notary whose stamp had been used on the forged deed. Margaret Chen, no relation to Marcus Chen, was 78 and had retired 2 years prior. "Mrs. Chen, did you notarize a quitclaim deed for Carol Harrison in October of this year?" "Absolutely not. I retired in 2023. My license expired, and I never met Carol Harrison in my life." "Do you recognize this stamp?" Rachel held up the forged document. Margaret put on her glasses and examined it. "That's my stamp. But I kept it in my desk at home after I retired. I couldn't figure out where it went." She looked at Eleanor. "I hosted a charity luncheon in September. Eleanor Harrison attended. I remember because she asked to use my bathroom, then spent nearly 10 minutes upstairs. When she came down, she seemed flustered. Your desk is upstairs?" "In my home office, yes." Eleanor's attorney jumped up. "Objection! This is pure speculation." "Overruled," Judge Hendricks said. "The witness is establishing opportunity." The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Eleanor stood as the verdict was read, her face blank. Jennifer, sitting in the gallery, let out a choked sob. Curtis Marsh looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Judge Hendricks set sentencing for 2 weeks later. At sentencing, Curtis Marsh made a last desperate plea for leniency. Eleanor's age, her previously clean record, her contributions to society. Rachel Kim stood up. "Your Honor, Eleanor Harrison spent 35 years belittling and abusing her daughter-in-law. When her son had the courage to leave his estate to his wife, as is his legal right, she responded by committing multiple felonies in an attempt to steal that estate. She forged documents. She committed identity theft. And even while under investigation, she attempted to file the fraudulent deed. This is not a confused elderly woman. This is a calculating criminal who believed her wealth and status put her above the law." Judge Hendricks looked at Eleanor. "Mrs. Harrison, do you have anything to say?" For a moment, I thought Eleanor would apologize, would show some remorse. Instead, she turned and looked directly at me. "You've destroyed everything," she said, her voice cold. "I hope you're happy." Judge Hendricks' expression hardened. "The defendant shows no remorse. Taking into account the premeditated nature of these crimes, the defendant's continued criminal conduct while under investigation, and her complete lack of contrition, I sentence Eleanor Harrison to 4 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 2 years. Additionally, she is ordered to pay restitution to Carol Harrison in the amount of $50,000 to cover legal fees and emotional distress. 4 years. Eleanor Harrison, pillar of Portland society, was going to prison. The appeals started immediately. Curtis Marsh filed every motion he could think of, but they were all denied. The evidence was too strong, the verdict too clear. 3 weeks later, Eleanor reported to the Federal Correctional Institution in Dublin, California. Her connections couldn't save her. Her money couldn't buy her way out. For the first time in her life, Eleanor Harrison faced consequences. Jennifer tried to continue the fight. She hired her own attorney, tried to contest Richard's will on new grounds. But after Eleanor's conviction, no lawyer would touch it. The case was toxic. The civil suit for restitution took another 6 months. In the end, Eleanor was ordered to sell her Victorian house in the hills to pay her legal debts and the restitution she owed me. The house that had been in the Harrison family for 3 generations, gone. Jennifer lost her position on 2 charity boards. The scandal was too much. Old Portland society closed ranks against the Harrisons. They'd broken the unspoken rule. You don't commit crimes so obviously. You don't get caught. Michael Harrison called to congratulate me. "You did what I couldn't," he said. "You made her face real consequences." On the first anniversary of Richard's death, I visited his grave. I brought yellow roses, his favorite. I told him about everything that had happened, about standing up to his mother, about winning. "I hope I made you proud," I whispered to the headstone. As I walked back to my car, the car I owned, that I drove to the house I owned, paid for with the inheritance my husband had left me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a year: peace. Spring came to Portland with cherry blossoms and warm rain. I stood in my garden, the garden Richard and I had planted together, and felt genuinely happy for the first time since his death. The house was entirely mine now, not just legally, but emotionally. I'd redecorated Richard's office, turning it into a reading room. The walls were lined with bookshelves, a comfortable chair sat by the window, and natural light poured in every morning. This was my space, my sanctuary. The life insurance and retirement fund Richard had left me meant I didn't have to worry about money. I'd paid off the mortgage in full, set aside funds for maintenance and taxes, and still had enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. I'd even started traveling, something Richard and I had always planned to do but never found the time for. I'd gone to Paris in March, walked along the Seine, visited the bookstalls, ate croissants in tiny cafes. Richard would have loved it. I'd brought his photo with me and had a stranger take a picture of me holding it at the top of the Eiffel Tower. "We made it," I'd whispered to his image. In May, I went to Ireland, saw the cliffs of Moher, stayed in a small bed and breakfast in County Clare, where the owner made the most amazing soda bread. I felt Richard's presence everywhere, but it didn't hurt anymore. It was comforting. Back home, I'd reconnected with old friends. Sarah, Thomas, and Diane from the library came over for dinner once a month. We'd cook together, drink wine, talk about books. Ruth remained my closest friend. She'd been there through everything, and I loved her for it. I'd even started volunteering at the library again, not for the money, but because I missed it. Helping people find the right book, teaching kids to love reading. It gave me purpose. One afternoon in June, I was at the grocery store when I saw Jennifer. She was alone, looked thinner than I remembered, older. Her hair had gone gray at the temples. She wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, nothing like the designer clothes she'd worn before. She saw me at the same moment. For a second, I thought she might say something. but she just turned and walked quickly away, abandoning her half-filled cart. Later, I heard through Ruth's extensive network of gossip that Jennifer had lost her house. The scandal of her mother's conviction, combined with the massive legal fees, had bankrupted her. She'd moved into a small apartment in Gresham, was working as a receptionist at a dental office. Her husband had left her. Apparently, he couldn't handle the social ostracism that came with being connected to the Harrison name. She tried to get custody of Eleanor's estate while Eleanor was in prison, but the court had appointed an independent trustee instead. Eleanor's remaining assets were being liquidated to pay restitution and legal debts. There would be nothing left for Jennifer to inherit. I should have felt sorry for her. Maybe a better person would have. But I remembered her standing in my kitchen, telling me to leave my own house. I remembered her grabbing my arm in the parking lot, threatening to bury me. She'd made her choices. As for Eleanor, the reports from prison were not kind. She was in a minimum security facility, but it was still prison. She shared a room with 5 other women, ate in a common cafeteria, followed a strict schedule. No more society lunches, no more charity galas, no more looking down on people she deemed beneath her. Michael Harrison told me she'd been disciplined twice for failure to comply with staff instructions. Apparently, Eleanor still thought she could order people around. The prison staff had quickly disabused her of that notion. "She writes me letters," Michael said when he visited in July, asking for money, saying she's learned her lesson, that she's sorry. Are you going to help her? Not a chance. She destroyed my relationship with my father. She tried to steal my inheritance, and she never once apologized until it benefited her. He sipped his coffee. Some people don't change, Carol. They just change their tactics. In August, I received notice that Eleanor had been denied early parole. The parole board cited her lack of genuine remorse and failure to take responsibility for her actions. She'd served the full 4 years. I thought about framing the notice, but that seemed petty. Instead, I filed it away and forgot about it. My life wasn't about Eleanor anymore. It wasn't about revenge or justice or proving anyone wrong. It was about living, about honoring Richard's memory by being happy, by being free. I started dating again, tentatively, nothing serious. A retired teacher named Tom who I'd met at a bookstore. We went to movies, had dinner, talked about literature and life. It wasn't Richard. No one would ever be Richard. But it was nice to have companionship again. Father Matthew told me that Richard would want me to be happy, to live fully. I thought he was right. On the 2nd anniversary of Richard's death, I hosted a dinner party. Sarah, Thomas, Diane, Ruth, Michael, Father Matthew, and Tom. We cooked together, laughed, told stories about Richard. I showed them photos from my travels. We toasted to absent friends and new beginnings. As I looked around my dining room table, in my house, surrounded by people who loved and supported me, I felt overwhelming gratitude, not to Eleanor, who'd taught me nothing but what not to be, but to Richard, who'd protected me even after death, and to myself for finding the courage to fight. The next morning, I received an email from Jennifer. The subject line, "Please." I deleted it without reading it. Some chapters were closed, and I was finally ready to write new ones. So there you have it. My story. A story about standing up to a bully, about fighting for what's rightfully yours, about refusing to be a victim even when it would be easier to just give in. What would you have done in my position? Would you have walked away, avoided the fight, let Eleanor take what she wanted just to keep the peace? Or would you have stood your ground? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, if you've dealt with your own difficult in-laws or family conflicts, please share your experience. You're not alone. If you enjoyed this story, I have others. Tales of family drama, unexpected inheritances, and people who refuse to back down. Subscribe to hear more. Hit that notification bell. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, sometimes the people who deserve your loyalty the least are the ones who demand it the most. You don't owe anyone your dignity, not even family.